Could you please speak to the relationship between government and the arts? What's the balance, if any, between, say, government subsidies for the arts and censorship? And at the end of the day, is government a good thing for movie making or a bad thing?
In the end of the day, what? Sorry?
Is government good or bad for the arts? Here, please.
My name is Rick Fisher, and I'm a student at LKY school. From what I read, and I hope what I read was accurate, excuse me if it wasn't, but you were actually an enlisted man, so you volunteered to go, and it also suggested that you requested combat duty. So my question is, what at that time of your life, what was in your mind when you did that, when you made that decision? And obviously, it's, your opinions have changed sharply. But I'm interested in what was really in your mind and your heart at that time.
The last question, please.
Hi, Vivian Liu from Philanthropy Works. As a filmmaker, what inspires you or what matters to you most and why? My second and final question would be, given your involvement at Tisch here, do you have any comments on how media here reflects the evolving social consciousness of Singapore?
Okay. I think I can't make any comment. But the second question about Singapore was what?
The evolving social consciousness of Singapore.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. Somebody got their opinion and it was actually bullshit. Your other question, I would tie into the gentleman's question before you. When I went to there was an anger and a defiance in me that is still there, and I'm admitting that because I was in boarding school and I was obviously I saw. In fact, I went to Yale University with George Bush. He was in my class. In 1968, I left there, and so I became. His life went well, mine went into government. But at the end of the day, I'm much far happier than he is because I resented these people. I felt that they were elite. They felt entitled, that they had the right to something. I was not comfortable. I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what I wanted. But I knew what I didn't want. So I left here and I went off to Asia. I taught school. I was an immersion Marine. I wandered around and had a pretty exciting life, and then I went back to Vietnam because I wanted to really see how bad it could be at the bottom of the barrel. I said that in the movie The Platoon. I didn't want to be. I made fun of myself in the movie as the kid who didn't have to do this, who wanted to do this. But that was very important to me to understand that what it was like to be like everybody else, because I had grown up apart from and isolated. So it was an experiment in trying. I didn't realize at the time it was an experiment in survival, but I found that out pretty soon. But it was an experiment in being honest with yourself. And that was the basis on which I could proceed. I suppose my life was, I was really at a break point when I either could go on as a person or not. And I felt like this had to be. My parents were not playing a role in my life at that point. They divorced, and I was on my own essentially since I was 14. So that was an important decision, and it really was the opening of a new life, to be honest with yourself and try to be. So I wrote a book about that time, and I actually went back and I edited it 30 years later, and I didn't change it. I kept it in the voice and the mind of an 18-year-old boy, 19-year-old boy. It was called The Child's Night Dream, and it was released by St. Martin's Press in 1997 in hardcover and paperback in some 15 languages. A Child's Night Dream. And it really is an honest picture of a person like me at 19, and that's really screwed up in some ways, but I would say it was a personal demons. And that anger and find is frankly still in me, and that is the cause of my able to show up here, I guess, and talk like this, and do these things, and try to make movies that matter. As to the government question, I don't have an answer. I don't know what government censorship I don't know about government sponsorship in the United States. The state governments provide tax relief for rebates, what they call, in various states. Michigan is one of the biggest rebates. I think it's 42%. I think we worked in New Orleans, in Shreveport on W. We got a rebate of approximately 25%. So these are very important. They give you that money back of what you spend in the state, on the idea that it creates more jobs and creates excitement in the state, and that seems to be the case. It does create a well of temporary prosperity. So some of the states are doing very well, and they've had many films. So government tax breaks do matter, if that's what you meant.
No, it's really meaning if government subsidizes, not so much production tax offsets, but Singapore is a great example. The government is very much a proponent of media development here in Singapore. However, there's an inherent balance when government is giving you money between what government will let you say as a creator.
All right.
Could you address that?
You bet.
Don't know enough about it, because it seems in principle that if the government gives you money, you're like the Soviet Union in the old days. You're going to shut up. You know, in France, for example, there's been a system of subsidies for a long time. And the French movie system continues on year after year, plowing out movies, some good, some bad. So the French system does work with government help. There has been subsidies in Germany. They used to have subsidies. These things have come and gone. And generally, and Canada has subsidies, but in the United States, subsidies no. And I think we're better off without it. I think that, you know, the market determines movies, and it's a rough market. You got to appeal. You got to have popular entertainment. You have to make things that people want to see. And this is a rule. This is a rule of the jungle. And the movie business is about as close to a jungle as Vietnam was to me. You're only as good as your last film kind of mentality. So it's a rough game. On the other hand, it's a fair playing field for talent. You better have talent, but it's rigged. The competition is rigged because corporations are corrupt. They've gotten so big, and the money has gotten so big, the marketing costs are so big, that they play with fixed rules. And basically 7 companies or 8 companies own all the distribution in the United States. They deal with the theaters. And at the end of the day, you're really dealing with a very small group of companies. And you've got to work inside a corporate monopoly. Now, inside that monopoly, if you're clever and you disguise your game, you can say subversive things. You can, through comedy, through drama, if you're exciting, if you're entertaining. But if you're out there to preach, you're not going to get it made. And you have to take that, it's a game, like everything else in life. And she talks about free speech. No one has complete free speech. We all have to modulate and be smart about this. And you speak, I'm not going to speak like this in Israel, or in certain countries. You know, you have to be careful.